Great to have you on the show. You're sort of like the kid who's gone back to boarding school, but you're not a year 7 anymore. You're sort of like a year 10. You're older and wiser, but, you know, you're back there again.
Well, you're right, and I feel as though it was a bit like short service leave. So I just took some leave and I've come back to work. Nothing much has changed, but the fact, Peter, that I've got an extraordinary privilege has been handed to me on 2 occasions now. And it's a privilege that a lot of people out there who with the popular view of politicians, couldn't understand why you would do it, or why you would, particularly at my stage of life, why you would thrash yourself to death doing this. But I tell you, it was very, very comfortable to come back today, and I can see. I hope I can see the contribution that I can make on behalf of those 137,000 people who voted for me.
All right, go back sort of 7 years ago. You and I worked very closely on all the preparatory work for Operation Sovereign Borders when I was working in opposition, and you were kindly helping Scott Morrison and Tony Abbott craft a plan that you hoped, fingers crossed, would work. Well, it worked, and it still kept the boat stopped. You're sitting in the Senate chamber right now with a bill before the Parliament in relation to medevac. Remind us why it's so important this bill has to be repealed.
It is critical to go back to exactly what you've done. That is to go back to the basics of why the Border Control stopping the boats policy was a success. And the simple reason as to why it was a success was its simplicity and the ability to differentiate between what is government policy, what then becomes the strategy, and then becomes how we apply that at the operational and tactical level. And when we see, well, if you know what you're on about, if you know why you are applying a tough, hard and sometimes nasty policy, and if you've got your own ethical framework solidly enough, you can see the silliness of overcoming that through false legislation that was brought down in a particular political scenario, and which is delivering the wrong thing for this country. We will, if we let the medevac bill stand, and if it creates a desire for more people to try to come to this country illegally, people will die, and that's the basis of it. Peter, if you keep that in your mind all the way through, we know why we want to get rid of the medevac bill.
Yeah, well, I bet you Christina Keneally isn't happy to see you back in the Senate. I want to touch on the issue of China just before you go. I know that you've had obviously a lifetime in the uniform, so you understand these strategic challenges probably better than most. How concerned were you about these allegations overnight about potentially a Manchurian candidate?
Well, I was concerned, but we shouldn't be surprised. In all the papers that spoke about this, the alleged Chinese spy ring in this country, and an attempt to take over our political system, in the same newspaper we saw an article which reported on an FBI agent who'd just been thrown into jail by the US because he gave away the US's spy rings in China. This is the way that big countries act, and we as a middle power have got to be very, very careful about how we approach all of these problems. So you're right, I'm concerned, very, very concerned about it, but I'm never surprised. This is the way the world has gone. We've missed all this, except for affairs back in the 50s and the 60s. We've missed most of this, but we should never assume that we're a lovely country, that everyone loves us, because the world is a nasty place. And we've put so much effort as a government into the agencies, into the police forces, and they're doing it, they're delivering. You remember back, Peter, in your time, Tony Abbott was putting resources into it. We've continued to put these resources in. And if you remember how ASIO, ASIS and various security organisations were treated by the Rudd government, they were given funds, the funds were taken away. They were given personnel, those funds were taken away. We haven't done that.
Yeah, we'll reap what you sow if you do that. Jim Molan, Congratulations on being sworn in today, and good luck for your term.